Aisha woke up screaming, but no sound came out. Darkness pressed against her eyes, heavy and endless. The air was thick, hot, and hard to breathe. Her chest tightened as panic rushed through her body. She tried to move her arms, but there was no space. Wherever she was, it was tight, suffocating, and terrifyingly silent. Her hand slammed into something hard. Wood. Cold. Solid. She pushed again, her fingers trembling. Panic exploded in her mind as understanding crept in. This wasn't a room. This wasn't a hospital bed. The walls were too close. The ceiling was too low. Aisha realized she was trapped inside a box. Her breathing became wild and uneven. Every breath burned her lungs. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it would break her ribs. Suddenly, a horrifying thought struck her mind like lightning. The box felt familiar. Too familiar. Aisha was underground. She had been buried. Just hours earlier, people had stood around her grave, crying. They believed she was dead. They lowered her body into the earth, covered her with soil, and walked away in silence. No one imagined that inside the coffin, Aisha was still alive. Aisha was only 25 years old. She had fallen sick suddenly, collapsing in her home. By the time help arrived, her body was cold and still. Doctors declared her dead. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Inside the coffin, Aisha's mind raced. The air was disappearing fast. Each breath became shorter than the last. Her chest burned as fear mixed with desperation. If she didn't escape soon, no one would ever know she was alive down there. She began to scream, but the sound died in her throat. Layers of soil and wood swallowed every cry. Above her, the world continued as normal, unaware that beneath the ground, a living girl was fighting for her life. Her fingernails scraped the wooden lid until they cracked and bled. Pain shot through her hands, but she didn't stop. Fear gave her strength she never knew she had. Every scratch was a fight against death. Suddenly, the coffin shifted. Soil fell onto her face. A small crack appeared above her. Fresh air rushed in, weak but life-saving. Hope flickered in Aisha's fading strength. With everything left in her body, Aisha pushed upward. The earth resisted, heavy and cruel, but she refused to stop. Somewhere above, freedom waited. She would not die in silence. Her hands finally broke through the surface. Cool night air hit her skin as she gasped wildly. Aisha dragged herself out of the grave, collapsing onto the soil, coughing, shaking, and barely able to believe she was alive. She lay there for a long moment, staring at the dark sky above her. The stars looked unreal. Just minutes ago, she had been trapped underground. Now she was breathing, alive, and trembling. Slowly, Aisha forced herself to stand. Her legs were weak, her body aching. Fear returned when she realized where she was. The cemetery was silent. No voices. No help. Only darkness. She staggered forward, calling out in a broken voice. Each step felt unreal, as if she were walking between life and death. She didn't know where to go, only that she had to leave that place. By morning, villagers found her collapsed near the road, covered in dirt and barely conscious. When she told them what had happened, no one believed her. Aisha was supposed to be dead. People whispered as she was taken home. Some crossed the road to avoid her. Others stared in fear. In their eyes, Aisha was no longer just a young woman. She was something else. Something that had returned from the grave. Doctors examined her again. This time, they found a faint heartbeat. They said her illness had slowed her body so much that it looked like death. The truth shocked everyone. Aisha had been buried by mistake. News spread quickly. People came from nearby towns to see her. Some asked questions. Some prayed. Others stared silently, unable to understand how a living person could survive the grave. But survival came at a cost. Night after night, Aisha woke up screaming. The darkness followed her into her dreams. Even in daylight, she felt the weight of the soil pressing down on her chest. Aisha was alive, but she was no longer the same. She had looked death in the face and escaped. And from that day on, she knew one truth deeply: life could disappear without warning. Weeks passed, but peace never returned. Every closed space made Aisha panic. She avoided dark rooms and slept with the lights on. Even the smell of damp soil sent her heart racing back to the grave. At night, she felt it again: the crushing weight, the silence, the lack of air. She would wake up gasping, clawing at her chest, certain she was buried once more. People in the town began to talk. Some said she was cursed. Others whispered that death had followed her home. Children pointed at her in the streets, afraid of the woman who returned from the grave. Aisha tried to live normally again, but something inside her had changed forever. She had crossed a line few humans ever survive. The grave had taken part of her peace and never gave it back. Sometimes, late at night, Aisha would sit awake and listen to the silence. And in that silence, she wondered if she had not escaped that grave. Would anyone have known she was alive at all? One evening, as rain tapped softly against her window, Aisha remembered something strange. While trapped underground, she had heard faint sounds above her. Footsteps. Voices. Someone had been near her grave. And walked away. The memory refused to leave her mind. Had someone heard her? Had someone known she was alive and chosen silence instead? The thought cut deeper than the grave itself. Aisha returned to the cemetery for the first time since her escape. Her legs trembled as she stood before her own grave. The earth looked calm. Innocent. As if it had never tried to claim her life. As she stared at the grave, a cold realization settled in her chest. Death had not failed her by accident. Someone had rushed her burial. Someone had not waited long enough. From that day forward, Aisha made a quiet promise to herself. She would speak. She would warn others. Because somewhere, someone else might be buried. Still breathing. That night, as Aisha lay awake in her room, she heard it again. A faint sound. Soft. Desperate. A cry. Buried beneath silence. Her body went cold. She knew that sound. She had made that same sound before. Slowly, she sat up, holding her breath. The sound came again, muffled, distant, almost swallowed by the earth. It wasn't in her head. Someone else was screaming. From underground, Aisha stood up slowly, her legs shaking. Memories of the coffin rushed back. The darkness. The lack of air. She realized the horrifying truth: what happened to her was happening again. To someone else. Outside, the night was quiet. Too quiet. But beneath the calm earth, a secret struggled to breathe. Aisha turned toward the door, heart pounding. She knew where the sound was coming from. As Aisha stepped into the darkness, one terrifying thought echoed in her mind: how many others had screamed beneath the ground and were never heard? Aisha didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the sound returned. Weak. Fading. Like someone running out of time. By morning, the sound was gone. The silence was worse. Aisha felt it deep in her chest: whatever was buried had stopped screaming. Later that day, the news spread fast. A young woman had been found dead. Declared gone after collapsing suddenly. Buried before nightfall. Aisha froze when she heard the name. Same age. Same street. Her stomach dropped. She knew the sound hadn't been a memory. That night, Aisha made a decision she had never planned to make. She was not going to ignore the dead again. If someone was buried alive, she would be the only one who could hear them in time. The cemetery gate creaked open. Aisha's heart pounded as she stepped inside. The air felt heavy, like the ground was holding its breath. She followed the sound again. Faint. Weak. Coming from one fresh grave at the far end. Her hands shook as she knelt. The voice was clearer now. Crying. Begging. Alive. Aisha dug with her bare hands. Dirt burned her skin. Nails broke. But she didn't stop. Then, silence. The voice stopped. Aisha collapsed beside the grave, gasping. She was too late. That night, as Aisha lay awake, a new sound filled her room. Louder. Closer. From beneath her floor. She pressed her ear to the ground. And then she heard it clearly, her own voice screaming. Aisha finally understood. She wasn't hearing the dead. She was hearing the future. And somewhere, deep underground, a woman had just begun to scream.